This is Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. We are really feeling the heat this summer. Here in the Burlington region, we've had this long streak of sunny, hot days. I was at a beach over the weekend, and it was full of people sunning themselves like turtles and finding relief from the heat in Lake Champlain. Now, unlike other sources of energy on our planet, this sun of ours out there is a limitless provider. And this might surprise you, but the cost of producing energy from the sun is cheaper than the cost of fossil fuel. That surprised me. And yet, only about 15% of our planet's electricity comes from sun and wind. And only about a quarter of all the energy we use is electricity. Why is that? Here to help us answer these big questions about our planet's energy future and the power of solar power is Bill McKibben. He's a climate writer who's penned more than a dozen books about climate change. He was one of the earliest voices to sound the alarm about the climate crisis. And his latest book is titled Here Comes the Sun, A Last Chance for the Climate and a Fresh Chance for Civilization. It comes out August 19th, so next week. He's also the Schumann Distinguished Scholar at Middlebury College, and the founder of the organizations Third Act and 350.org. And he's a contributing writer at The New Yorker. Bill, I feel like every time I talk to you, your introduction just gets longer and longer. You got to stop accomplishing things.
Very good to talk with you, Michaela, and it's very good, at the very least, to have the air a little free from that wildfire smoke that was choking us last week.
Yeah, tell me about it. It has been tough here in the Burlington region with it. And listeners, we'd love for you to join this conversation with Bill McKibben as well. We're going to be focusing on solar power today. So if you work in the solar space or have seen the industry change over, say, the last decade, give us a call at 800-639-2211. And perhaps you've read Bill McKibben's recent work in this space around solar power, solar energy. If you have questions for him, again, you can give us a call, 800-639-2211. Bill, I'm hoping we can start this conversation by defining some terms here. When I think about solar energy, I think about like the solar panels on some of my neighbors' houses, the occasional big field of panels that I'll drive by in Vermont. That's what we're talking about here when we say solar. Yes? Anything else?
Well, yeah, for the purposes of this book, I've been talking about energy from the sun, which also includes wind power. The sun heats the earth differentially, producing the breeze that turns those majestic turbines. But the fastest growing part of all of this around the world is photovoltaic power, either in arrays in fields or on top of roofs, factories, car parking lots, on and on and on. And its growth is really what I wanted to write about, because I don't think people have quite noticed what's happened over the last 24 months or so. We've, as long as I've been alive, we've talked about this kind of energy as alternative.
Yeah.
But over these last couple of years, it's become the obvious, straightforward way to produce power. 95% of the new electric generating capacity added around the world in the last year came from sun and wind, and pretty much the same number in the US. It's happening because sometime in the last 5 years or so, we crossed an invisible line where this became cheaper way to produce power than burning coal or gas or oil. We live on a planet where the most inexpensive way to make energy is to point a sheet of glass at the sun, which is potentially a truly epochal moment for human civilization. We've been setting things on fire, the archaeologists tell us, for 700,000 years, but we don't really need to do that anymore, because we have this large ball of burning gas 93 million miles away that we now have the wit to make full use of.
So setting things on fire, you're referring there to fossil fuels, which we're relied on very heavily for energy. And I just want to reiterate this point that you're making here about how much has changed in the last 2 years, because it really blew my mind that so much has changed in this world of solar. You also wrote in the New Yorker that roughly a third more power is being generated from the sun this spring than last. That
That's right.
statistic is wild.
No, the growth is incredible. We don't notice it quite as much because it's happening. Well, a lot of it's happening in China. They're the world leader in all of this. But closer to home, there are parts of this country that are seeing the same thing. California, which is the first state that really took seriously the possibilities of renewable energy and the threat of climate change, California has put up so many solar panels and so many batteries that it passed some kind of tipping point in the last 18 months. Now, most days, more than 100% of the electricity that California uses comes from renewable sources for long stretches of the day. That means that at night, the biggest source of the grid is often batteries that have been soaking up excess sunshine all afternoon. And here's the bottom line. California this summer is using 40% less natural gas to generate electricity than it was 2 years ago. 40% drop in the world's fourth largest economy in the use of fossil fuel to produce electricity. That may be the most that may be the most optimistic number that I've heard in the 3.5 decades since I wrote The End of Nature, the first book
Yeah.
about all this climate stuff. And by the way, if you want to understand why the fossil fuel industry and the Trump administration is mobilizing so hard to try and stamp out this transition or at least slow it down, that's the reason. They can tell that their sales in California are dropping 40%, and they don't like it one little bit.
And that was going to be my next question for you, Bill. You're describing this what sounds like a very optimistic, positive transformation that's been underway already, almost without us noticing it. And you're saying, "Hey, look over here! Look at this big stuff that's happening with solar." But I know you, Bill, and you're not just going to point out something good that's happening. You're going to call us to action and say this isn't going to keep happening unless we do something. And you're hinting at that with what's going on, what you're noticing with changes to federal support for solar.
Yeah,
Can you tell us a bit
no,
more?
absolutely right. The Trump administration has more or less declared war on renewable energy, and from day one of the administration. And it's precisely because this transition threatens their funding base in the oil and gas industry. You'll recall about a year ago, candidate Trump told executives that if they gave him $1 billion, they could have anything they wanted. They ended up ponying up about $500 million all told in the last election cycle, and that proves to have been enough. Literally, they're trying to close down wind projects that are already up and operating. The federal government said last week that public lands are now essentially off limits to sun and wind, on and on and on. It's an open question, Michaela, whether or not they can stop this from happening in our country or not. Um, the momentum is strong. The place that's actually installing renewable energy at the fastest rate in our country is the state of Texas, which is ironic since that's also the hydrocarbon capital of the world. The oil industry tried to shut down renewables in Texas in the legislative session this year. They had a bill that was essentially DEI for natural gas. If you wanted to put up 5 megawatts of solar, you also had to put up 5 megawatts worth of natural gas. But across rural Texas, people rebelled and showed up in Austin to tell the state legislature, look, this is how we fund our school system now. This is what keeps our old folks home open, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And the state legislature backed off and didn't put those rules into effect. Um, I don't know what'll happen. It's obviously trending the wrong way in Washington, which is why we're mobilizing people across America on September 21st for what we're calling not Earth Day, but Sun Day, a day to drive home the message that this is not any longer alternative energy. And in Vermont, I don't have all the, you can go to sunday.earth to get the whole calendar, but I know there's a plan for what they're calling a critical mass youth bike ride in the morning in Burlington. In Middlebury at noon to 3 on the green, there's big concert powered by the battery in a Ford F-150 Lightning with lots of other activities. Over between Norwich and Hanover, I think they're doing a big parade up to Norwich Green, down towards Bellows Falls. They're doing big tours of people's heat pumps and solar arrays on their homes so that they'll demystify them for their neighbors. That kind of thing is happening across the country on that day. It's a start of trying to push back against this truly ill-advised Trump crusade.
Mm. Uh, Bill, I wanted to ask you more about what you're seeing going on in Vermont and in northern New England. I mean, these states obviously don't have the population size or the GDP of other states you've mentioned, like California and Texas. But have you seen advances in solar energy uses going on around here?
Well, it's obviously a very mixed bag. Um, Vermont actually has a lot of rooftop solar. We were early into this because there's a lot of Vermonters who really care. But when it comes to wind power, as you know, we've had a more than decade-long de facto moratorium on it. And as people try to build larger solar arrays, in my part of the state, in Addison County and things, they increasingly run into all kinds of opposition. The state panel turned down a 10-acre solar farm a year ago in Manchester solely on the grounds that people didn't want to look at it. Aesthetic reasons were the only ones that the state said counted here. I think this is remarkably short-sighted for all kinds of reasons. The most important, of course, are what's happening to our climate, and we in Vermont should understand that better than anybody else. As you say, heat advisory tomorrow across Vermont. Yes, as you pointed out, people are fleeing to the beaches, but 25 of those or so are under environmental advisory for cyanobacteria in the lake. That comes not only from the increased heat of the water, but from the fact that our now recurrent flooding keeps washing nutrients down into Lake Champlain. We need to be serious about addressing this, and we need to be serious about addressing the fact that Vermont sends about $2 billion a year out of state for fossil fuel, money that just flows straight to Saudi Arabia or Houston or wherever. Think what that money could be doing if it was staying in this state and if we were developing our local energy resources, which we've got sun and we've got wind. And I know it because I put solar panels on my roof a quarter century ago, and they're still going strong, powering our conversation.
If you're just joining us, we're speaking with the climate expert and writer Bill McKibben of Ripton. His latest book, which explores solar and wind energy, is called Here Comes the Sun. Bill, a listener named Ginny wrote us ahead of the show and said that she's a renter. She rents her house and is wondering if there's any kind of small solar available to people who don't own their home. I know
Yes.
you're not our installation expert here, but I'm wondering if you have
Well,
thoughts for her
but
as an individual.
this one I can tell you.
Great.
And the answer is yes, there sure should be. Uh, Last year across Germany, about 1.5 billion renters put up what we're calling balcony solar. They went to whatever the German equivalent of Best Buy is and came home for a few €100 with a panel, pretty big panel designed to hang from the railing, the balcony of their apartment, and then plugged straight into the wall. And in many cases, it was providing 20% of the energy that these households were using. This balcony solar revolution has spread across Europe in the last year or two, partly in response to the invasion of Ukraine and the desire to get off outside sources of fossil fuel, and partly because people really care about the climate crisis. In this country, it's illegal everywhere to do that, except from 2 months ago in the state of Utah, where a libertarian state legislature convinced that deep red state to unanimously pass the enabling legislation. So now in Salt Lake City, you can go hang one of these from your balcony and plug it right in. This leads to a deeper question about permitting in general for solar. I just wrote a big article for Mother Jones, and this will be one of the focuses of Sunday, about the fact that solar installation in America is about 3 times more expensive than it is in Australia or the EU. The biggest reason for that, from what anybody can tell, is the Byzantine and unnecessarily complex permitting systems for putting this stuff on your roof. We have 14,000 jurisdictions in America. Each one has their own set of rules. They send out inspectors over and over again. This slows the whole thing down. In Australia or much of Europe, you can decide on a Monday that you want a solar system on your roof, and it's there plugged into the grid and pumping out energy by Thursday or Friday. Here, it's often months-long process. By the way, people should start that months-long process now if they're thinking of it, because the federal tax credit for solar systems, that the Trump administration, expires on New Year's Eve. But in general, over the long term, we need to fix this, and we can. It doesn't wait on federal action. Every city or county or state can do this. And the easiest beginning, which California, Maryland, and last month New Jersey have adopted, is something called the Solar App. It's an automated permitting system that allows contractors to get, in essence, an instant permit just by plugging in the equipment that's going to go on your roof and how it's going to tie in. We don't need, and we shouldn't have, as complex a system as we do for permitting. There is no epidemic of fires from solar panels on people's roofs. The epidemic, the danger, comes from the rapid rise in the temperature of the planet. And this is one of the ways to address it, and address it quickly.
Um, Bill, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up a concern that we've heard numerous times here on Vermont Edition. Whenever we talk about EVs, electric vehicles, every time we have one of those shows, we always get at least one question from a listener who's concerned about the negative environmental impact of those massive batteries that EVs use, and the reliance on lithium, and which is mined in nations such as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I'm curious if you address those types of concerns in your
Hmm.
book.
Indeed. There is no free lunch. There are only more and less expensive lunches. So you have to compare what happens as we do this with what we do now. Um, and we obviously should be mining as safely and humanely as we can, but mining is always a fairly brutal process. That's why it's good news that as we transition to renewable energy, we're going to mine a lot less. If you think about it for a minute, you can figure out why. If you go mine some lithium and you put it in a battery, it sits there doing its job for the next 25 years. And then when the battery is degraded, you can actually now quite easily and cost effectively recycle it, reclaim that lithium, and start over again. That's why the Rocky Mountain Institute last fall had a study that showed that all the mining required for all the batteries in the energy transition between now and 2050 would require less mining than the amount of coal that we dug up last year. Uh, when you dig up coal, it's not like lithium. You dig it up, you set it on fire, and then you have to go mine some more tomorrow. If you want to think about the material change that comes when you do this, about 50% of all the ship traffic on planet Earth, or north of 40%, is just shipping coal and gas and oil back and forth around the planet, a job that the sun and the wind are happy to do for free. In fact, if you get a boatload of solar panels and ship them across the ocean, that will, over its lifetime, produce about 500 times more energy than a boatload of coal. The possibilities for real change and real liberation are enormous here. Even if climate wasn't the most critical issue that our species has ever faced, there'd be other good reasons. About 9 million human beings a year, that's one death in 5, die from breathing the combustion byproducts of fossil fuel, those particulates that lodge in your lungs. If you've been to Delhi in recent years, that won't come as a surprise. But even in this country, there are hundreds of thousands of cases of childhood asthma, and we know who gets to live next to the refinery and next to the freeway. So this is a huge justice issue. And as long as we rely on an energy source that's only available in a few places, the people who control those places will end up with lots more power than they deserve or can use wisely. Look, in our country, the biggest oil and gas barons, the guys who controlled the most refinery and pipeline capacity, were the Koch brothers, who spent their winnings degrading our democracy systematically. If you look at Europe, Vladimir Putin's the biggest oil baron. He used his winnings in that casino to launch a land war in Europe in the 21st century. Think how nice it would be to rely on an energy source that's available everywhere, that can't be hoarded or held in reserve. Even human beings will struggle to figure out how to fight a war over sunshine, which I think is a very nice thought.
Bill McKibben, climate writer, activist of Ripton. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us about your new book, Here Comes the Sun, which comes out August 19th.
A real pleasure as always, Michaela. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Bill McKibben is also a distinguished scholar at Middlebury College and the founder of the organizations Third Act and 350.org. All right, we have to take a short break here, but stick with us because when we come back, we're going to learn about a couple organizations that are supporting veterans in our region and some threats to their funding that they're facing. This is Vermont Edition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Several federally funded programs that support Vermont veterans are financially struggling. That's after the Trump administration's Big Beautiful Bill cut funding sources this summer. Leaders of these local organizations are now working with the state's congressional delegation to try to find other ways to fund the programs, which they say are vital to the health and well-being of Vermont vets. We're talking mental health counselors, benefits advisors, jobs like that. Leading this charge is Miriam Boyle, the Director of Family Programs for the Vermont National Guard in Colchester. Miriam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
We're glad to have you. And we are also joined in our Colchester studio by Kristen Eaton, the Deputy Director of Vermont Vets Town Hall. It provides storytelling opportunities and support for local veterans, and she's based in Heinsberg. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, listeners, if you or a loved one or a veteran, we'd love to hear from you this hour. Perhaps you've had some struggles accessing benefits for veterans in the past, or you've used the Veterans Outreach Program, which we're going to be discussing today. Give us a call. Tell us about it. Our number is 800-639-2211. Now, Miriam, back in May, June, there were a bunch of news stories about how these federal funding cuts could lead to the closure of organizations. And it's August now. You're still here, you're still working, but a whole lot has changed. What's happened in the past few months?
Quite a bit. So at the end of June, our Vermont Veterans Outreach Program sunsetted. So that was 19 people housed throughout Vermont, embedded in the communities. These are outreach specialists that were combat vets or veterans themselves and would connect, especially in those rural communities where, we know that 80.9% of Vermonters live in very rural areas. So they would connect with them and help them navigate the VA, help them get in touch with benefits. If they had housing issues or financial issues, they had a lot of resources. They had a lot of contacts that they would be able to connect these veterans to these resources. So that program went away at the end of June. And then in July, I had 3 more programs, but they were one-person programs, personal financial counselor, a mental health counselor, and a family readiness manager. And it's devastating. to Vermont's veterans, service members, and their families not to have these resources available to them. I am very lucky in that I have wonderful federal employees that work with me, and we are trying to pick up the slack, but it hasn't been easy.
Yeah, I could imagine. And Kristen, you're also working in this space, supporting veterans. What have you been hearing from the folks that you work with as we go through this time of turmoil and change?
Well, most of our events are coming up the end of the year, but I have already started getting questions from folks about, since the outreach program is no longer available, like, who can they go to?
Who can they go to
to help find benefits, to help with wellness checks on a friend who's a veteran who they're worried about, all sorts of issues.
Yeah. And Miriam, can you tell us a bit more about exactly what the Veterans Outreach Program used to do? I mean, it's been around since, 2007? Okay.
Yeah.
So say you're a vet and you're living in Vermont. What are some of the things that you might be working with these folks on?
Right. So our Vermont Veterans Outreach Specialists would go out into the community and connect with community partners, law enforcement, Office of Veterans Affairs, the VA, so that they would know that they were available to help with their veterans. So a situation might be they would call the 888 number and say, I am a Vietnam vet and I need help. And come to find out, this Vietnam vet is not enrolled in the VA. And they should be. They have missed out on the opportunity to get so many benefits: health, mental health, physical health, and all these resources that are there for them. So the outreach specialist would walk them through the process, get them enrolled, find out if they had any service-connected disabilities, like if something had happened to them while they were serving, that impacts their life even now, and maybe even more so than before. They would make sure that they got compensated for that. And we know the VA is a big organization, and it's very overwhelming for our veterans to try and navigate that. A lot of them are just looking for financial resources or housing. I know that from 2017 to 2025, that the Vermont Veterans Outreach helped over 800 Vermont residents with housing issues, whether they were homeless or at risk of being homeless, and they have been able to help them find resources. They were boots on the ground and put their feet under the kitchen table and talking to the veteran and her or his family to see what they can do to help them to improve their lives.
Yeah, so it sounds like applying for benefits and following that process can be something like a full-time job for a lot of folks.
Absolutely. It's very overwhelming, overwhelming, because you've got papers and you're like, okay, where do I start? That's where the outreach specialist would come in to help you with that.
Yeah. Chris, I see you nodding about that process. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that folks often assume that the benefits just come. I'm a non-veteran myself, and from past experience before I started working in that space, I think that it's easy to assume that. But I would compare it more towards dealing with navigating issues with health insurance or the tax code. Like these can be difficult things to work through.
Yeah. And I'll admit, I mean, I'm not a veteran, and I think I had in my head that, when you are discharged or you retire from service, you come home and then you start getting stuff in the mail, or somebody gives you a call and say, hey, this is how you do things now. But that's not how it works.
That's the hardest part of it, is that when they leave the military, they're like, okay, what do I do now? There is no, ongoing connections typically with the military once you leave. So it can be very difficult to know where to go, and that's what was so great about the outreach specialists.
Right, right. And this Vermont Veterans Outreach Program was cut from this recent massive bill that went through Congress, was signed by President Trump. We've been talking about Vermont-specific numbers, but this is a program that many other states relied on too. Yes?
So the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon funding, it was a supplemental funding attached to appropriations. So it was never guaranteed from year to year. And over time, because Vermont was the first state to utilize this type of funding, and then it grew. So now 25 states are impacted by the lack of the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon funding. Because of the continuing resolution, we've never had a full year of continuing resolution. So it was just kind of like kicking the can down the road. So even though the Senate agreed and approved the funding for this past year, it didn't happen. It didn't continue. So some of the other states use this funding for work for warriors. When you leave the military and you're trying to find civilian employment, it can be really difficult because you had a certain job in the military and now you're a civilian. How do I take those skills and, find a job that will help be compatible. So a lot of states used it for that. Some of the states use it for behavioral health. But we were the only state that had a very unique program in the Vermont Veterans Outreach.
And Kristen, Miriam's talking about a lot of tough issues that veterans face, and like we were just saying, it can be hard when you're not a veteran or from a military family to really conceptualize what that means for individuals. And that's in part the work that your organization does to help veterans share their personal stories and to help them connect and to help others outside that world understand what they're going through. Do you hear stories related to some of these issues that Miriam's bringing up in the Vets Town Hall programs? Everything from accessing benefits and medical supports to needing mental health counselors that are tough to get access to?
Absolutely. Our events are focused on personal stories and experiences, so we're not, generally speaking, not discussing benefits specifically, but that's something that comes up all the time in conversations when I meet with potential speakers, when I have conversations before and after the events with veterans. And I do think it's an integral thing for non-veterans to understand, to be good friends and neighbors and colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Have you noticed a shift in your time working in this space, Kristen, in veterans' comfort and talking openly about some of these difficult issues, or is there still, I don't know, a bit of a stigma around that?
I think that, so I would say that I hope so, at least in that we work very hard to make Vets Town Halls a place where veterans feel comfortable sharing their experiences. We work hard to to make sure these events are non-political and to make sure that veterans know that the community members who come are ready to listen to whatever they're going to say. And so I certainly hope that in Vermont at least, and nationally as we work to bring these events to other states, that we're working towards that change. I don't know, Miriam, maybe you can speak more broadly to that.
Yeah. So, what's so wonderful about the vet town halls is that it's an opportunity to bridge that gap of between the veterans and community, where the community doesn't really understand. The veteran feels they don't really fit in. So this is a wonderful opportunity to bring the two together, have an open dialogue, and be able to help each other understand the other person's point of view. And people come out of it like, wow, I had no idea. She once had a Vietnam vet nurse, a wonderful woman who used to come to the town halls and talk about her experiences in Vietnam as a nurse and helping soldiers who were injured, and it just really opened my eyes to a part of the military that I wasn't aware of, and it led to a deeper understanding of what they went through. But yes, it's an opportunity so that they feel comfortable to open up and say, hey, I really need help. Do you by any chance know anyone who could help with ABC? And our Vermont Veterans Outreach Specialist would be there at these town halls all over the state and be able to say, yes, come see me on Monday morning and we'll work on it.
Yeah. It sounds like a close-knit network of organizations that are here to support veterans.
Right. Yes.
Let's pause here for one more short break, but when we come back, let's keep this conversation going. And I also want to hear, Miriam, from you about what the potential funding solutions are to this issue, this situation we found ourselves in today. This is Vermont Edition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. For the past few months, local programs that support veterans have had to let staff go because they have lost the federal funding they need to function. Miriam Boyle is with me in the studio today. She's the Director of Family Programs for the Vermont National Guard, based in Colchester. And we also have Kristen Eaton, the Deputy Director of Vermont Vets Town Hall, which is an organization that runs storytelling events and provides support to local vets. Miriam, we've described a pretty dire funding situation in which Vermont Veterans Outreach has had to let go, 1920 staff members? 19 staff members in the last few months. I know you've been in conversation with Vermont's 3-person congressional delegation to try to figure out a funding solution. What's the status of those conversations?
So Vermont is very lucky. We have an amazing, engaged congressional delegation team with Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Peter Welch, and Representative Becca Balint. We are so lucky. So I have had many conversations with them, and they are working in D.C. To help try to untangle some of this funding. But the reality is they haven't been able to make the changes they would like. But it hasn't been from a lack of trying. I feel very fortunate that we're able to connect with them. Going forward, so we go by fiscal years. FY25, FY26 is coming up. And it appears that the funding approved for FY26 is half of what the 25 states need. So it's going to continue to be a fight. But I have no doubt that our 2 senators and a representative will fight to try to get more funding. In the meantime, I just want to mention that National Guard Bureau has been able to find funding for like a stopgap measure, but it's very small, and it's around employment services. So it's something that we can work with, and that National Guard Bureau has been great about supporting us. But it's not. It will never go unless we get the full funding. We won't be able to go back to the robust Vermont Veterans program that we've been having. So, we're very fortunate with our CODEL.
Yeah. Well, as we were talking about a few minutes ago, it sounds like Vermont's a small state, but we have a network here of organizations that support veterans in lots of different ways, and you two are representatives of just 2 of those. And Kristen, I'm wondering if you could kind of speak to that network a little bit more. I mean, you're focused on one specific area, helping veterans tell their stories, but you're working closely with a bunch of other people in the space. Yes,
Absolutely. I mean, even on vets town halls themselves, we partner with lots of different local organizations. The Vermont Veterans Outreach Program has attended, I believe, every vets town hall up to this point, which is, I think, 27 events in Vermont. And also, for example, we have an event coming up in Rutland in early November, and we're working with Vermont Adaptive's Veteran Ventures program. We're working with Vietnam Veterans of America Chapter 1, which is based in Rutland, and other local community organizations. And I think my experience has been, at least, that in Vermont, we really are partners. Like, we're really looking to build on the work that each organization is doing. And that's just it's a really wonderful community that I feel very lucky to, as a worker, to get to be a part of.
yeah. And there's so many different types of work that you do. And Miriam, in this Vermont Veterans Outreach Program we've been discussing today, which has seen these staffing losses, just the breadth of the work that they do is hard to sum up. But one thing that really stuck with me when I was reading about it was this phone line, this 24/7 non-crisis line that people can call for information. And that's had to change too, right?
Correct. So because of the diminishing numbers of the staff, that has to now be Monday through Friday, 7:30 in the morning to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And that's hard because sometimes things come up for veterans over the weekend or holidays or that type of thing, but I simply don't have the staff in which to be able to do the 24/7 non-crisis that we've been doing. So we're trying to maintain it this way.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, there's 25 states that have been impacted by the loss of this funding. And this is a really diverse group of states, right? Have you been in contact with your counterpart in some of these other states, and what have you been hearing?
Yeah. So the one thing that to come out of this, a positive for me, is I no longer feel alone in that I have connected with my counterpart in Georgia, Hawaii, California, Rhode Island. It's just all across the country, and we all have the same goals, the same mission is to take care of our veteran service members and their families. So I have been able to connect with a lot of them, and they're just trying to find their way as well as we are. And it's an amazing network that I've been able to tap into.
I have been curious hearing both of you speak with passion about your work, how you got involved in the first place with veterans services. Kristen, what led you to this path?
Sure. So, as I said, I'm not a veteran myself. I did not grow up with any close connections to the military. I read Sebastian Junger's book Tribe in 2016, and he talks about vets town halls. It's Sebastian Junger who originated this format of event. He talked about the first event, or wrote about the first event in Marblehead in 2015. And so that year, I wanted to attend one because I just thought, this is something I don't know anything about. I could learn a lot. But we didn't have any in Vermont. So I went to an event in Dover, New Hampshire. And early the next year, I started reaching out to local veterans who were kind enough to chat with me and give really good advice, and did say, yes, I think this is a good idea to bring to Vermont.
Wow. Okay, so it just took that one experience at an event like this to really hook you and see its importance in that community.
It did. It was an event that I went to and heard people speaking really generously and in really nuanced ways about very difficult subjects. Yeah. And I think we need more of that.
Yeah. And Miriam, how did you come to do this work you do?
So I come from a military family. I'm not a veteran either. I have three siblings rather.
That's a different
no
show.
spouses. Three siblings. They're all veterans. One of them is a combat veteran, and the other two served in active duty. My father was a Korean War era veteran, aunts and uncles. So I grew up in that type of household, and so I've always had a passion for that. An opportunity came up because I come from the banking and mortgage business originally, so when an opportunity came up, I was thrilled to be a part of this amazing organization.
Yeah,
that was 14 years ago.
Well, we have a call here. We only have a couple minutes left, so I'll ask you to be brief with your comment or question. Anne in Greensboro, go ahead.
Hi there. I'm the daughter of a Vietnam veteran who served in the Navy as an officer on a ship, and he does a lot of fellow Vietnam veteran work in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering how I could be an ally and help local Vietnam vets in Vermont. And that's my question.
Thank you so much, Anne. So Anne's the daughter of a Vietnam vet and wants to know how she can help local Vietnam vets in this region. Kristen, well, first, I know you have a bunch of events coming up. That could be one way.
Absolutely. And we would, first of all, as the daughter of a veteran, we have a family vets town hall coming up. It's in Bristol on September 25th, and immediate family members of veterans are invited to speak at that event. Miriam has spoken at a similar event in the past. We also have 7 vets town halls coming up this November, which are wonderful opportunities to literally show up for veterans and listen to what they want to share with the community.
And Miriam, do you have any ideas for Anne?
Yes,
here?
so throughout Vermont, throughout the country, actually, in all of the communities, there are VFWs, Veterans of Foreign War, and American Legion, and it's a wonderful way to get to know some of the veterans. They'll tell their stories, and they all have events, and that would be a wonderful way to get connected with Vietnam veterans, especially. They utilize the VFWs and the American Legions pretty heavily in the different communities. So that would be definitely my suggestion. I wish you were closer here because I would also recommend Josh's House, which is a wonderful organization, actually right around the corner from Vermont Public, that welcomes all veterans and supporters. We would be considered supporters to come and connect. And they have a rec room, and they offer meals, and they have one of my part of the Vermont Veterans umbrella. My mental health counselor used to hold a monthly support group at Josh's House for spouses. And they were mostly Vietnam spouses. And it was a wonderful, wonderful thing that she used to do. Unfortunately, that's gone away as well. So
She had to be let go because of this funding?
She was because it was the outreach specialist, the personal financial counselor, the mental health counselor, and the family programs manager, in addition to the Vermont Veterans Outreach. Yeah. So that would be my recommendation.
Well, thank you, Anne, for calling in, and thank you to our guests as well for telling us about the work that you do to support veterans in Vermont and the surrounding region. Miriam Boyle is the Director of Family Programs for the Vermont National Guard. Miriam, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, you as well. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
We've also been joined by Kristen Eaton this hour with Vermont Veterans Town Hall. Kristen, thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right, that is all the time that we have for today's conversation. As always, please feel free to weigh in on our show or pitch us ideas. Tell us what's happening in your corner of the state and the region by emailing Vermont Edition at vermontpublic.org. You can also connect with Vermont Public on Instagram. Our show today was directed by Mary Angish. John Ahrens is our managing producer, and Andrea Lorian and Daniela Fierro are our producers. Today's call screener was Kelly Delorier, and our theme music is by Myra Flynn. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch up again soon.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.